Hello, third grade. We are back with part 2 of our anthology text, The Talented Clementine. In part 1, we learned that this story is about our main character, Clementine, and her struggle to identify her talent. Clementine is the narrator of the story, so that means it is written in first-person point of view. It is written from her perspective and her experiences. The author uses pronouns such as I, me, mine, we, and our to convey this. In the story, we stopped just before the talent show was about to start. Clementine was so busy helping her peers prepare for the show that she had not realized that the show was about to start in just 5 minutes. Let's pick up in the middle of the story where we left off and read on to see how things go for Clementine.
Everybody ran to their places. I ran to the curtains and peeked out. Every seat in the audience was filled. Margaret's teacher clapped her hands for attention. Before we get started, she said, I just want to thank you all for being part of the show. Each and every one of you is helping to raise money for the big school trip next spring, except Clementine. Okay, fine. She didn't actually say except Clementine, but you could see everyone was thinking it. Just then the secretary came over and handed her a note. Oh my goodness, she cried. She jumped up out of her seat faster than I thought a grown-up should. Oh my goodness gracious, it's now! My daughter's having her baby, my first grandchild. Go, said Mrs. Rice, it's all right. We can handle the show. Just go be with your daughter. Oh, thank you, Margaret's teacher said. And then she left so fast, she really did lose one of her bobby pins. It didn't look like lightning, though. It just looked like a bobby pin falling to the floor. Wow, I said to Mrs. Rice. So now you have to run the whole show by yourself.
Why does Margaret's teacher thank the students? Margaret's teacher thanks the students for being in the show. She explains that by them being in the show, they are helping raise money for the big school trip. What does Clementine believe that the others are thinking? Clementine believes that Margaret's teacher is thanking everybody except for her. Clementine even makes this exaggerated statement saying that she says, except Clementine, and then goes on to say, well, she didn't actually say that, but everybody was thinking it. This shows me what Clementine thinks is happening. What does Clementine say to Mrs. Rice when Margaret's teacher has to leave? This last line of dialogue shows what Clementine says. She says, so now you have to run the whole show by yourself. It doesn't seem that Clementine understands yet that she is a part of the show by helping the others. Even though she's not performing an act, she's been a really important part to making sure that the show is running smoothly. Earlier in the story, there was a conversation between Margaret's teacher and Clementine where Margaret's teacher apologized to Clementine for giving her these glaring looks whenever she did something. Margaret's teacher explained that she has been antsy all night, but wasn't able to explain why she had been antsy. Now that we have read this page, can you infer why Margaret's teacher may have been acting antsy all night? Margaret's teacher may have been acting antsy all night because all during rehearsal she must have been thinking about her daughter and the possibility that the baby would be born soon. Clementine sees Margaret's teacher jump up out of her chair and leave so fast that she loses a bobby pin out of her hair. At this point in the story, both Clementine, our main character, and us, the reader, now understand why she was antsy during the rehearsal.
No, not by myself, Mrs. Rice said. I have an assistant, and that's you. Me? Oh, no, I can't. You can, and I'm certainly not doing this alone. I really can't. I don't pay attention, remember? You do pay attention, Clementine. Not always to the lesson in the classroom, but you notice more about what's going on than anyone I know. And that's exactly what I need tonight. I don't think this is a very good idea at all. Well, I do think it's a good idea. I'll prove it to you. Principal Rice called over one of the hula hoopers. Hillary, what's the second act after intermission? Hillary looked around. I don't have a program, she said. Do you want me to get you one? Mrs. Rice told her no thanks. Then she turned to me. Clementine, what's the second act after intermission? Caleb, from the 4th grade, is going to burp the Star-Spangled Banner, I told her. Does he need any props? A 2-liter bottle of root beer. How long will it take? 41 seconds. 48 if he has to stop to drink extra soda at the rocket's red glare part. I rest my case, Principal Rice said. She pointed a no-buts finger at the empty director's chair. When a principal orders you to do something, it is impossible to refuse. Some part of you always gives in. So I climbed into the chair. Open the curtains, Principal Rice said, and the worried scribbling feeling exploded all through my body.
As we read, we can ask ourselves details about things that we might be unsure of, and then we can reread the text to find the answers. For example, how does Mrs. Rice convince Clementine to be her assistant during the talent show? Well, instead of Mrs. Rice just telling her, hey, this is your talent, she gives her information or details about Clementine that will help convince her. Mrs. Rice tells her that though she may not always pay attention in class, she notices more about what's going on than anyone else. She then asks Clementine questions about Caleb's act to show how she knows every detail about each act. Principal Rice says, I rest my case. So now that Margaret's teacher has left, there's this open director's chair, and Principal Rice directs Clementine to sit in the director's chair. At this point in the story, Clementine's talent is finally revealed. She gets to sit in the director's chair, even though she's been acting as a director all day throughout the rehearsal and the show. Down here we have a question that says, how does Clementine feel about being the principal's assistant? Well, the author uses sensory language to describe how a character feels. For example, when Clementine says the worried, scribbling feeling, that describes how Clementine feels when she gets nervous. Then she says, exploded all through my body. This describes how she is overwhelmed by nervousness when the show starts. Even though Clementine is nervous, she doesn't refuse. In this paragraph it says, when a principal orders you to do something, it is impossible to refuse. The word impossible has the prefix im, I-M, and the base word possible. The prefix im means not or the opposite of. So the word impossible means not possible. So it is not possible to refuse.
Well, you would think those kids had never had a rehearsal. First thing, all dozen doozies cartwheeled off the edge of the stage. Well, except for one girl, who forgot to move at all. Maria and Morris Boris Norris, from my class, went on next. And they cartwheeled right off the stage, too. Nobody had to go to the emergency room, though, and the audience thought the whole thing was supposed to happen that way. so it was okay. The next act was the O'Malley twins. Lily had convinced Willie not to do the thing with his lunch and to play a duet on the piano with her instead. But when Lily got up to the mic to announce the act, she got so nervous she threw up. I looked at Willie, sitting on the piano bench. Willie does everything Lily does, and sure enough, he was getting ready. "Not on the piano!" I yelled, just in time. Then I ran over and closed the curtains quick, so the whole audience wouldn't get started too. When the janitor came running out to clean everything up, I had a good idea. "Send Sydney out now, in front of the curtains," I told Mrs. Rice. "Why?" she asked. "There's no microphone out there." "That's okay. Sydney's really loud. And she's going to recite a poem, so there's no cartwheeling, just standing still. Besides, she's got really skinny feet, so she can fit out there if she stands sideways." So Sydney went on stage and stood sideways, and yelled her poem. By the time she was done, the stage was all mopped clean. Next came the hula hoopers, and they completely forgot what I'd told them about stopping. The music ended, but they just kept on going. Finally, I had to close the curtains to pull them off the stage so the jump ropers could go on.
Why does Clementine close the curtains on the twins? It says, then she ran over and closed the curtains quick, so the whole audience wouldn't get started too. She didn't want them to start throwing up too. It also gave the janitor time to come out and clean everything up off the stage. Why does she send Sydney out in front of the curtains? Well, Clementine knows that Sydney can yell her poem and fit out there if she stands sideways. Clementine now knows her help is needed. She has taken an active role, helping everybody with their act. So many things could have gone wrong that Clementine knows that her help is needed.
The jump ropers must have figured that if the hula hoopers didn't have to stop at the end of the music, neither did they. So I had to close the curtains on them, too. Then came Margaret. She did fine at the walking on stage on time thing, which not everybody did. But just as she got to the microphone, Alan took a picture of her from the audience, which was a bad mistake. Whenever anyone takes a picture of Margaret that she isn't expecting, she freezes. She says it's the horror of not knowing if she looks perfect or not, which I don't understand, because Margaret always looks perfect. No matter, there she was, frozen on the stage with her mouth hanging open. For one tiny second, a little part of me thought, "Good, no showing off for you tonight." But then my empathetic part took over. I ran over to where Margaret could see me and waved until I got her eyes to unfreeze. I pointed to my hair and pretended to brush it.
What does a little part of Clementine think for a tiny second when Margaret is frozen on stage? Clementine says, "Good, no showing off for you tonight." Why does Clementine decide to help her friend? The text says, but then my empathetic part took over. When you're empathetic or feel empathy for somebody, that means that you're sharing their feelings. So she must have felt compassion for Margaret and how she felt in that moment.
Margaret nodded like a robot. She turned to the audience. "First, always brush your hair, even if it's cut off like mine." She looked back at me. I pretended to do up some buttons. Then I pointed to my right. "Always make sure you're buttoned up right," Margaret told the audience. Then I lifted my foot and crossed my fingers over my sneaker. Never wear green sneakers, Margaret said. Green sneakers are the worst. Then she shook herself, as if she'd been asleep. She went up closer to the mic. Wait a minute, she said. I was just kidding about that one. You can wear any color sneakers you want, and green is the most fashionable of all. She zoomed me a smile so huge, all her teeth bracelets sparkled like diamonds in the spotlight. I zoomed her one back, except with no teeth bracelets, because I don't have them yet. After that, Margaret was okay. I went back and climbed up onto the director's chair, and Principal Rice gave me a huge smile, too. She leaned over and said, I have the answer for you now, Clementine, about why you can't have a substitute. It's because there is no substitute for you. You are one of a kind. And that's when I realized I didn't have the worried feeling anymore. Instead, I had the proud feeling, like the sun was rising inside my chest.
Why do you think Mrs. Rice compliments Clementine? Mrs. Rice wants her to know that she is a good assistant. Clementine finally realizes that she's no longer worried and is actually proud to be Mrs. Rice's assistant. And Clementine should feel confident and proud. She worked hard and she did a good job.
The proud sun-rising feeling stayed with me all through the rest of the show. And no matter what went wrong, which was plenty, Mrs. Rice and I just fixed it.
Down here, we're asked to visualize. It says use the descriptions to visualize Clementine's actions at the end of the story. How does she feel? The author writes, she has a proud feeling, like the sun is rising inside her chest. She is not worried anymore, even when things go wrong. Her and Mrs. Rice just take care of it. At the beginning of the story, we ask the essential question, how can you use what you know to help others? In this story, we learned that Clementine has a talent for paying attention and learning the details of each act in the talent show. This allows her to help the other students when they have problems performing their acts. So Clementine is using what she knows about managing and directing to help others. All right, boys and girls, that's it for our story, The Talented Clementine. Thanks for watching and learning with me today. Bye for now.